Welcome back to the deep dive. So, we've dug into a stack of really critical reports this week, and they all revolve around this single massive piece of news in the world of semiconductors and, well, geopolitics. Nvidia has secured U.S. authorization to sell its most powerful new AI chips, the H200s, to approved customers in China.
Right. Approved customers being the key phrase there.
Exactly. On the surface, this sounds like a clear market opening, a huge win for Nvidia's revenue and for Chinese tech firms who are, desperate for top-tier hardware.
For training their massive AI models, yeah.
But the context here is everything. Okay, let's unpack this. Our deep dive today is focused on one central question that really cuts right through the headlines. Does authorization automatically translate into adoption? Washington gave the green light, but given the strategic landscape, will Beijing actually choose to bite?
And that tension is really the core of the story for you. While the market sees, immediate sales potential, our sources indicate this profound political and strategic friction. We have to move beyond the immediate quarterly sales forecast and look at the deep, locked-in momentum inside China.
And that momentum.
It suggests that this authorization is a short-term tactical maneuver. It's not a long-term strategic shift.
Okay, let's start right there with that tactical maneuver. The breakthrough itself is significant. Nvidia finally got the green light to sell the H200.
The real deal.
The real deal. This is their newest, most powerful processor for advanced AI training. I mean, they spent the better part of a year pushing these slightly weaker control-compliant versions like the H20.
And those didn't exactly fly off the shelves.
No, and now they have approval for the top-of-the-line model.
But what's so fascinating here is that this authorization is, well, it's heavily laced with caveats and restrictions. They undermine its effectiveness right out of the gate.
So we're not talking about a return to open trade.
Not at all. The approval is highly selective. It's only for approved customers. This means Washington maintains direct power to decide who gets access.
And, crucially, to revoke that access at any moment.
Exactly.
And Washington is making sure this is an expensive transaction, too. It's almost institutionalizing the risk for Beijing, isn't it?
Precisely. This is a critical nuance that's often missed in the initial reporting. The U.S. government will receive a significant 25% cut on those H200 transactions.
A 25% cut.
Yeah. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, what does that signal to Beijing about the reliability of this supply channel?
It says it's not reliable.
It says the supply is being leveraged for direct financial and political gain by the U.S. Treasury. It just confirms that buying H200 chips is inherently tied to a volatile political cost.
So it's effectively placing a tariff on dependency.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And we already know Beijing was resisting. I mean, even when Nvidia designed that weaker H20 model to fit under the old export controls, reports were circulating that Beijing was actively discouraging its domestic firms from buying them.
Right.
That friction existed before the H200 was even on the table.
That's a key data point. It shows the problem isn't just about the capability of the chip Washington is controlling.
It's about the source.
It's about the source. The Financial Times reported that even with H200 authorization, China would still limit access. Now, this isn't Washington imposing controls. This is Beijing choosing rejection. It validates their fear that reliance on U.S. tech is just a massive liability.
So, given that Washington is already taxing the transaction and has shown it's willing to just shut off the tap, it seems Beijing already views this supply as strategically unreliable.
Completely.
So let's pivot to the why. Why would China actively resist access to the world's most powerful AI chip, even if it could get it?
The answer is in that deep, unshakable strategic calculus in Beijing. The priority isn't optimizing this quarter's performance. The priority is eliminating dependency on American technology.
Stop.
And that strategic long view absolutely trumps any immediate performance needs.
This is captured so perfectly by that quote from Neil Shah of Counterpoint Research. He was very, very blunt in his assessment.
Yes. Shah's assessment really just drives the point home. He said, while this move reopens the door for U.S. revenue, the strategic train has already left the station.
The strategic train has already left the station.
That single sentence tells you everything. China's shift to self-reliance isn't a plan they're considering anymore.
It's happening.
It's an outcome that is already in motion and extremely well-funded.
And you can feel the momentum, can't you? We're talking about massive investments in homegrown alternatives, and these players, they're not starting from scratch.
No.
Nvidia's own CEO, Jensen Huang, he acknowledged the speed at which competitors like Huawei are advancing.
That's the ultimate validation, isn't it? Huang stated that Huawei's progress in AI chip design, specifically their Ascend series, is probably comparable to Nvidia's own H200.
Probably comparable.
Now, comparable doesn't mean equal, but it signals that the gap is closing very, very rapidly, especially in areas that matter for the Chinese domestic market.
And China's strategic advantage isn't just about Huawei building one powerful piece of silicon.
No.
It's about building an entire parallel technology ecosystem that's optimized for their local needs.
And we're seeing major domestic tech players like Alibaba and Baidu all scaling up their own offerings.
So this is where we get into what our sources call full stack optimization.
Exactly. And it's far more than just hardware parity. Full-stack optimization means that Chinese AI development houses, whether it's Baidu developing their LLMs or other firms building cloud infrastructure, they are simultaneously optimizing their software and their models to run hyper-efficiently on domestic hardware.
On things like the Huawei Ascend series.
Precisely. So they are mitigating a potential hardware deficit by integrating the software and the chip design specifically for each other.
They're building a self-contained environment.
Yes. Shaw noted that the Chinese ecosystem is catching up fast, with AI models optimized specifically for domestic silicon and software. This kind of ecosystem resilience, it drastically reduces the performance penalty you'd normally associate with using domestic chips. It makes the transition away from Nvidia much less painful over time.
And the political risk assessment just confirms this is the right path for them.
It does.
Shaw warned that remaining tied to American chips is a huge risk, describing it as a liability with a hanging sword of political uncertainty.
And that raises a fundamental question for any Chinese AI strategist, right?
Yeah.
Why would you allow your country's entire future in AI to be dependent on the shifting political winds in Washington, especially when you have a domestic alternative taking shape?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
The sources are clear. Domestic self-sufficiency is deemed the only viable long-term strategy for Beijing. Huang himself even commented that if Nvidia were permanently excluded, Huawei alone could probably handle the country's chip needs.
Wow.
The commitment to strategic independence is total.
Okay, so on one side, we have this ironclad strategic commitment to self-reliance. But on the other, despite that massive shift, there are these powerful short-term market forces just pulling Chinese firms directly toward the H200.
Right. Performance and supply urgency.
Those are the clearest drivers.
The H200 is still necessary right now because there's a measurable performance gap. It's particularly true for the largest, most demanding AI models.
So let's define how it's superior.
Okay. The H200 is built with vastly superior HBM, that's high bandwidth memory, compared to that neutered H20 model. And it offers much better scalability through NVLink for these massive parallel processing clusters.
So for a company like Alibaba or Tencent, trying to train a world-class large language model,
that performance difference translates directly into months saved and billions of dollars in power costs avoided.
And that performance gap is directly tied to the manufacturing choke point, which China hasn't solved yet.
That is the crux of the efficiency issue. China is improving rapidly in design, but the production nodes required for these state-of-the-art AI chips are still out of reach.
Right. They lack access to, the Western lithography tools?
Exactly. The cutting-edge lithography tools and advanced chip-making equipment from U.S.-aligned suppliers like ASML. And because they can't access those top-tier tools, they're forced to use older, less efficient manufacturing nodes.
Which has a direct impact.
A huge one. Shaw pointed out that trying to ramp up advanced domestic AI chips in terms of performance or yields remains technically elusive. It just makes it less economically efficient in the immediate term than simply buying Nvidia's superior product today.
That gap in cost, time, and power efficiency is what's creating the market necessity.
It is.
And efficiency, time to market, simple supply urgency, these are massive factors that can overcome strategic ideology, at least in the short term. Alibaba's CEO, Eddie Wu, has cited ongoing bottlenecks throughout the entire global semiconductor market.
Sure.
So if you're racing to deploy a new AI model and you can get your hands on the fastest chip right now, you might temporarily sideline that strategic imperative just to stay competitive.
That's the market reality. Ben Berenger of Quilter Cheviot summed up the immediate outlook perfectly. He said there will be demand for H200 as it is a better chip than H20, and there is a shortage of chips in China.
Plain and simple.
Right. Chinese tech companies, he noted, will use Nvidia and AMD if possible.
That if possible is so critical, though.
It is.
It confirms the corporate hunger for immediate performance, but it also acknowledges all those political strings we talked about.
So there you have it, this complex tension for you to think about. On one side, massive immediate market demand driven by performance necessity and supply gaps.
But on the other,
An unshakable, well-funded, and deeply political national strategy to eliminate that dependency entirely.
so what does this authorization mean in the grand scheme of things? Is this a strategic reversal or just a temporary market fluctuation?
So it is absolutely not a strategic reversal. George Chen of the Asia Group was very clear in his long-term analysis. He said China's self-reliance strategy for tech won't change in the long run for the next 5 to 10 years.
So that direction is locked in.
Completely locked in, regardless of what Nvidia is selling today.
And this dichotomy, the locked-in strategy versus the immediate market need, this is what creates what Chen called a good time window for Nvidia.
A good time window for Jensen Huang to sell the H200.
A lucrative but temporary opportunity.
Right. Fueled entirely by China's current technological and supply deficits.
But Chen's stressed that this window won't be forever.
Of course not. Beijing cannot risk its entire economic and technological future on a temporary export channel that could be shut off instantly with the next political pivot in Washington.
The political risk assessment is just paramount. It would be foolish to rely on it.
Precisely. Chen emphasized that Xi will not be foolish that today Trump can sell H200, and then China just totally relies on U.S. chips.
No.
So every H200 sale today is viewed by Beijing as a temporary measure, a short-term tactical purchase that buys time.
Buys them time while their domestic developers like Huawei and Alibaba
Execute their mandate in China's marathon to win the AI race.
So we circle right back to that central tension. The H200 authorization is this potentially lucrative but also potentially fleeting opportunity for Nvidia.
Mm-hmm.
It's fueled by China's immediate short-term need for superior performance and supply. But this market-driven moment runs directly against Beijing's deeply entrenched long-term strategic goal of eliminating all dependency on foreign, specifically American technology.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture for you, we've seen that while domestic players are making major headway.
Especially with that full-stack optimization.
Yes. But the measurable gap between, say, Nvidia, AMD, and Huawei is still quite wide when it comes to the cutting edge of performance and power efficiency. That gap is the only thing keeping the door open for the H200 right now.
So we'll leave you with this provocative thought to consider. If that crucial technological performance gap, the one built on access to advanced lithography and superior memory, if that narrows significantly in the next year or two, given China's unwavering commitment to self-reliance and the political liability of using American chips, what incentive will approved customers have left to purchase American chips, even with Washington's authorization?
The strategic train has left the station. Now, the question is simply how fast it catches up to the technological curve.
We hope this helped you get well-informed quickly. We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.